In the NBA, not all players who enter are able to forge a successful career. Sometimes circumstances do not develop as anticipated, and the most promising stars fail to live up to expectations. There are various reasons why some players perform poorly, such as the context in which they find themselves, injuries, external influences or, in certain cases, they simply do not have the necessary level. In today's video we are going to talk about 10 players who are considered the worst players to have ever played in the NBA. Before starting the video, I want to tell you something. I'm close to 2,000 subscribers. So if you are watching this video and support me, subscribe so that I am motivated to bring you more videos of this style. Now, let's go to the top 10. The first case I want to talk about is that of Anthony Bennett, who was part of the 2013 draft, for many considered the worst draft in history, since most of the players from there finished being failure. Anthony Bennett was selected with the first pick by the Cleveland Cavaliers and ended up having disappointing statistics, 4 points and 3 rebounds per game during the 4 seasons he was in the NBA. Although, well, I can't play it because Anthony Bennett wasn't supposed to do this in the NBA. He had only played 1 year at the university before making the big leap, and there he had one of the most outstanding performances in all of college basketball. In fact, there were many franchises that wanted to get him, but as I said, the Cavs kept this player when in reality, if they were looking for a power forward, they could have easily grabbed Antetokounmpo, who actually fell to 15th position of that draft. Can you imagine what would have happened if Giannis Antetokounmpo ended up falling in Cleveland and played with LeBron? Anthony Bennett ended up being quite useful because Cleveland ended up trading him to Kevin Love came to Cleveland to help LeBron James, and in this way, the Cleveland Cavaliers won their first and only championship. In 9th position, we find Cherokee Parks, whose college career at Duke spanned 4 years before making the jump to the NBA. His arrival occurred in 1995, when he was drafted and subsequently signed by the Dallas Mavericks as the 12th pick. However, his time with the Mavs was limited to a single season, which marked his debut in the league, recording modest averages of 3 points and 3 rebounds in 64 games. Later, he would join the Minnesota Timberwolves, where, despite enjoying 20 minutes on the court per game, he would barely manage to score 7 points and grab 5 rebounds. Finally, his NBA career would culminate after becoming a free agent, concluding his last season with the Golden State Warriors, where his statistics were extremely discreet, averaging only 1 point per game during the 2003-2004 season. The 8th place goes to Nicolas Tskitishvili, if you pronounce it that way, who, after being chosen in position 5 in the 2002 draft, averaged 1.7 points per game in his last 2 seasons, one of the worst statistics in the league. He spent only 4 years in the NBA, in which he ended up playing only 172 games and retired averaging 3 points. Adam Morrison is a name that comes to mind when talking about the worst players in NBA history, because, of course, we remember that Adam was the number 3 pick of the Charlotte Bobcats in the 2006 draft, thanks to his impressive performance for the Gonzaga Bulldogs in college. But despite that, he came to the NBA and fell apart. He ended up averaging 3.4 points over his final 2 seasons before heading to Serbia to try to reinvent his career. Let's now explore the 6th position, which is reserved for Munk Bada. This talented player of Chinese origin entered the NBA through the 1997 draft and had previously had an outstanding career in his country of origin, both at the national team level and on local teams. However, his time in the NBA was not recorded in the fans' memories. His stay in the league was short-lived, limited to just 3 years, during which he failed to stand out for any of the 3 teams he played for: Nuggets, Spurs and Raptors. He finished his participation in the league with an average of 3.4 points and 2.5 rebounds per game. However, as I mentioned earlier, his true success was experienced in China, where he received CBA Player of the Year honors 4 times. In 5th place we have Todd Fuller, who was the 11th pick in the '96 draft for the Golden State Warriors. First of all, let's think that with that pick, the Warriors could have. They were left with Kobe Bryant, Steve Nash and Jermaine O'Neal, among others, but they opted for the center who had had a great college career. But, as you can well imagine, he came to the NBA and couldn't deliver. He averaged 4 points per game with the Warriors, before averaging 3 with the Utah Jazz. In his last seasons in the league, he retired without pain or glory after only being in the NBA for 5 years. In 4th position on this list is one of the most recognized players, someone that most people will surely identify, Brian Scalabrine. Despite being the subject of ridicule and memes, he managed to thrive in the NBA for more than 10 seasons, mainly thanks to his imposing stature. However, it is important to note that throughout that period, he had questionable performances on the field. In fact, in his last 2 seasons, his average plummeted to just 1.1 points per game. In short, during his career, he maintained a modest average of 3 points and 2 rebounds per game. Interestingly, the White Mamba experienced a surprising turn in his life when he became an assistant coach, where he demonstrated a remarkably different performance. With 3rd place, we have a Latino, I'm talking about Rafael Araujo. Many thought that the 188 Brazilian would be an instant success after being the 8th pick of the Toronto Raptors in 2004, but that was not the case. He was expected to form the perfect pairing with Chris Bosh and Vince Carter to take the Raptors to the next level, but he lasted 2 seasons with the team, averaging 2.9 points and 3 rebounds per game while shooting 41% in shooting. Coming in second on our list is Michael Ruffin, who somehow managed to stay in the NBA for 9 seasons despite having some of the most unfavorable statistics in league history. Ruffin averaged just 1.7 points per game on 41% shooting throughout his career. His points per game average plummeted astonishingly to just 0.5 points. Something curious happened with Michael Ruffin, and he is also known for having one of the worst plays in NBA history, against the Toronto Raptors when he was with the Wizards. Look at what this boy does, please. What was he thinking when he threw the ball up? Deserved 2nd place. At number 1 on our list is Sun Yu, the Chinese player who entered the NBA with great expectations but soon disappeared from the scene. Sun was one of the great promises of Asian basketball and was selected in the 2nd round of the draft by the Lakers. However, his time in the NBA was fleeting, participating in only 10 games during the 2008 to 2009 season and averaging just 0.6 points per game. His playing time was limited, with less than 3 minutes per game, which naturally affected his stats. Subsequently, he was sent to the D-League and eventually released by the Lakers. To make matters worse, he signed with the Knicks in July of the same year, but was again released a few months later. Sun Yu's case is really curious, since despite being considered one of the worst players in NBA history, he managed to win a ring with the Lakers after playing only 10 games. A truly incredible story. There are many other players who don't understand how they got to the NBA. They didn't have a good step. So, again, I ask you to subscribe to reach 2,000 subs. Like the video. See you on Saturday in a new video.